Alright guys, welcome back to the shack. Today we'll be doing the video from the computer. I've got everything set up to where I believe you can see me, as well as I have us a camera set up over the xTool S1. And as promised today guys, I'm going to go through the jig setup. It was a little too much to add into the other video with the mirrors. But yes, after weeks of trying to overcome issues that I was having with the S1 with being able to batch things out the way that I can with my other machines, I finally figured out a way of doing it. And just a little couple of things that we're going to go over beforehand that you need to look out with your machine to make sure that this will work with your machine, because there are situations where it may not work. So pay attention to that part. But we're going to go through that, the requirements that you need to have to be able to pull this off, the files, what the files look like, and I'm going to go show you a couple of demos of how to create those using the computer capture as well as the overhead screen. So stick around if that's something you're into, and we'll be right back. Alright guys, pay attention to this part. The way that this kit works, you're either going to have to have the riser kit installed so that your machine exposes these screws right here. If you'll notice, there's a screw right there. That screw is actually one of the screws that when you got the machine, you had to take these two little blocks out to keep the gantry from sliding. I recycled that screw, and there was a hole that I was able to use as an index point. It was almost as if they put that in there for me to use. So if you do not have the riser kit installed, then you're going to have to take the crumb tray out of the machine in order to be able to use this, because that's located underneath the crumb tray, and it's going to change the whole way that the thing works. So just make sure you pay attention to that part. I don't want to mislead anybody. I do have the riser on mine, and what happens is I've got my crumb tray in the high setting on the riser. This sits in the corner, and I'm going to turn around here and kind of show you how things work. What it boils down to, guys, is the jig indexes off of this square right here, off this 90-degree angle. It basically just slides up in that corner, and when it does, it aligns this screw hole here, and you place that one screw in there, and the only purpose of that is just to keep this from sliding out of that corner right there. Most of the indexing is being done by these two flat surfaces here. So as long as your machine is square, and it should be, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be, this should work. The hole should be, as long as xTool doesn't change the design, the hole should be in the exact same place as where mine is right here on this bottom ledge. And that's where you're going to need to take one of those screws that you use from shipping and just place in that little hole. When you buy the kit, it's going to be this whole board right here, but there's some other steps that you got to do. So let me turn around here, and we're going to kind of show you what that is. All right, guys, so here's the board as it sits. Now, the cut file is only going to contain these three files right here. If you don't want to cheat and do like I did and use extra, like these are just some pieces of scrap wood I had laying around, and I worked it out to where I could use those instead of having to cut a bunch of plywood. But if you don't have that, you can just layer this using this last layer, the little solid frame that does not have, use the one that does not have the little tabs in it. You can just layer this as many layers as you need to do so until you get to the point of having it even with the machine. From the total thickness of this thing is 33.92, and I do have some little rubber bumpers on mine to keep it from sliding. These are just some little silicone rubber feet that I put on things that would be sitting on tabletops. So if you account for those, we'll say the total is going to be 36.9. So very, very close to 37 millimeters thick. If you're using 1/4 inch material, you'll need to account for that and calculate how many layers, or you can just sit it in there and test it. If it's not enough, you can add another layer. Once you get down to the final adjustments, you could use a 3 millimeter material, or do like I did and just use some little rubber dots to give it a little bit of grip so that it doesn't try to move even with the screw in there. But that screw hole is right here. That's the only point of attachment to the machine other than it just indexing in that little hole. All right, so to go over this in case some of you missed it, the way my design works is you have two shouldered pieces right here. This allows you to do two things, guys. When you're doing cuts, you're not going to want to necessarily drop the material all the way down in there. Let me get a blank piece of material. So when you're doing cuts, if you drop it in here like that, you're going to have a recess to the top of the material. If you're not worried about your focus and you think you got plenty of focus, that's fine. But as a recommendation to keep everything simple, I also include in the file this little spacer. And all this is, guys, is just another little cut. You don't have to use this. You could develop your own spacer. You could do it some other way. You could technically take and just cut you a little piece to go from side to side to space it up. However you want to do it. If you're worried about wasted material, that is an option. But you just take this guy. So once you put the spacer in there and you set that down in there, now it's even with the surface of the material. So that's the way you do your cutting. And if you get too close to the edge, guys, you will do like I did. See my little marks? That's where I was cutting out my jig pattern. But once you get the cutting done and you're ready to start engraving, then you got to take your spacer out and you got to put a floor in here. If whatever it is that you have is going to fall through, you need to add you a little floor. Just use a solid piece of material. If you've got a piece of metal that's that size, you could use it, acrylic, whatever. But to me, wood works best. Then you would take these little jig panels and just set down in the remaining part of the hole and just flat to the surface, and everything is where it should be. So that's basically the build, guys. So what I've got in the file, again, just reiterating, is you're gonna get the square panels like these. You're gonna get the top part. You're gonna get the two pieces you need to stack here. Remember, you only need two of the slotted ones that have the little finger hole in here. The rest of your pieces need to be the one without any slots. That way you can just stack it, or you can just put one, because you got to have one at least for that little shelf. And then you can come up with some scrap wood to put under there, or whatever you feel to do with it. If you want to save material, just cut yourself some little circles and make some legs. However you want to do it, you're going to have to get this so that it does rest on the cookie sheet and it's not just hanging. So a couple of different options that you can do. Like I said, with the little circle legs or just little square legs and glue them together, you could just make you some of these out of some, laminated materials if you choose. But however you overcome that, this needs to be the thickness that I mentioned earlier, and I can't remember what it is, but that way when it connects, it sets flat on the cookie sheet. All right, guys, so there's no real special preparations. You seriously just take it, set it over in there. Once you've got your thickness correct, when you put it up against this rail, pull it back to this rail, this screw hole right here, the screw hole should be lined up. Put your screw in there, take your little Allen wrench that came with the machine, and tighten this screw down. Once you tighten that screw down, everything is secure. I use the rubber feet on mine so it can't go anywhere. Now we're ready to do some cutting. So I'm going to show you how I go about designing a jig first. So we will be putting our spacer in here because I'm going to need to do some cutting. And then I will take and I'm going to put me another little blank sheet of material in there, and we're gonna show you the process for setting everything up, confirming everything, and we're gonna make a jig. Let's get this thing cooking. You should be able to see once it processes. It's gonna pop up this little preview window here, and as it does, I'm gonna tell it to start, and then I gotta push the button on the front, and you'll be able to see what happens from there. All right, guys, so as you saw, we got all of our little squares cut out. So now the thing to do with this cut layer right here is you're gonna wanna make sure you select this cut layer and set it to ignore. And one thing I forgot to show you a while ago, you can actually click it here. It'll select all of them and then ignore. You don't have to click each one. Like I said, XCS is still kind of new to me, guys. So now all I've got now is I've got this these little frame marks. And my item frame is set to ignore, as well as the big overall frame that I put in here initially is set to ignore. So one thing that I like to do is, especially in XCS, I can rename this to business cards. And if I'd have thought about it, I would have opened my other jig kit, the jig file that I've already created. So now I'm going to have to go back and remap this, but it's not a big deal. So now that I've got the little blanks and I put my little pieces back in the hole, for ones of you that didn't see, that's just the scrap pieces. We're going to use those as sacrificial pieces instead of doing some business cards at the moment. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm also want to make sure this is set for an engrave. So I got it 90% power, 400 millimeters per second. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to run those. So let me get you an overhead view here. And what I'm going to do is just basically hit the process button. Same thing. It's going to take it a minute to preview it. And then you tell it to start. And then I got to hit the button. So here we go. And as you can see, guys, see how much over travel that module does when it's engraving to the left? That is why I had to kind of push all of my templates to the center, because running these faster speeds like that, if you do not give it enough room to have room to slow down, then it's going to change your speed settings for you. All right, guys, so we got the first two done, and going to pop those out for you so that you can see exactly what happened. So, because these aren't cards, my little thumb holes are not going to work with them because they have a thumb hole on them. But there's the result from those two. And we're going to put two more on there. I'm going to change the text to make this a little quicker. I'm going to change it over to a score so that you can just see it rip through. And we're going to do two more sets, just showing you that you can put them right back in there and reproduce. And this works with any item, guys. As long as you can make a hole for it to sit in, this will work with any item. So let's get back down to the screen. So it says that they're complete. We're going to hit the OK, and I'm just going to click this engrave here. And I'm going to change this to a score and set it to my Luon. And we're going to put two more in there and run it real fast. And then we're going to take them out and run another one. Process button. Takes it just a second. Start, and off to the races, guys. All right, guys, now this is one of the things about the xTool for batching that I really do like. So I'm going to just let you see how I do this, because I'm not even going to use my computer. I'm going to open the lid, and I'm going to take these two out, and we'll look at them in just a second. Put the jig back in, because I had to take my jig out because these do actually have the tab. I'm going to sit these guys back into the holes for the jig. All right. I'm just going to close the lid. I'm going to hit the button again. Ha! That is one thing about the xTool that I do like, is once you send a job to it, if you're batching things out, when you unload and reload, all you got to do is reach down and hit that button on the front, and it will hit your next batch. and you don't even have to go to the computer. So technically you can minimize XCS and be playing your radio, say your favorite radio station. So there we go. All right, guys, so I got a slate coaster out, and I'm going to load the file that I made yesterday for the coasters, and we're going to demonstrate how you can just go from one jig to the other, as long as you save your files, you use the jig every time, everything should work out great. So down to the screen we go. So what I'm going to do is go in and open this is my S1 jig file, which is where I meant to save that other one, but I didn't. So we'll open it up. All right, so this is the file that I did yesterday, cutting out those coasters and doing the design. So on the cut right here, this would normally be set to 4.5 millimeter Luan, but it's set to ignore also. So I'm going to hide that because I don't really need that in my workspace. This one right here, this one also needs to be set to ignore, because this is simply my item frame. If you look at these two, basically that just shows you where the coaster is going to be sitting, and it allows you to use something to center your material in the workspace. And over here, you'll see that I have a coaster up in the top left box. Now that coaster has been engraved on quite a bit, but we're just going to put a star in the workspace. And I'm going to move it to the black layer. And guys, you'll notice that my layer colors look a lot like the ones I use in Lightburn, and that's because it gets confusing to me if I don't do it that way. So I'm going to use these little automated centering lines, which I think are really cool. Let me move that out of your way. So as you're moving this star in the center of this shape, it'll give you the automatic, where you're in the center indicators. And I think that's pretty cool. That way, it makes it easier to quickly place items. All right, so I'm just gonna go over here and pick a setting. All I'm trying to do is make a mark on this Luan, or on this slate. So I'm gonna be running 80 power and 200 speed for a score. Let's slow that down a little bit. Let's slow that down to 100. All right, process. Gotta shut the door. The door is shut. I'm gonna hit start. And here we go, guys. All right, so the star's in the middle of the coaster, guys. And yeah, I know this coaster, it needs sanding or something to reuse it, but anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that you can save these files, open them later, reuse them. Just make sure to save. And guys, I am slowly learning XCS. I apologize for all the slips and staggers today, but I only use it with this machine, and y'all know how long I've been doing other machines, so it's taking me a little getting used to, and I'm having to learn to set it up the way that I'm used to in Lightburn. So I hope this helps, guys. Like I said, the file will be in my Etsy shop here soon. All right, guys, before we go, I want to show you one last thing. And yes, I messed my file up earlier, but I went back and using the 2-point data collection system that's on the machine, I've combined both the jig that I made yesterday and the one that I made today. And just want to kind of show you how that looks in XCS before you go, so that you'll understand how I mean about building a jig file, but building it for multiple devices or multiple items. So we'll move you over into XCS and show you this right quick. So now if I go to the other file, you'll see that the laser is located on the top right corner of either file, which means that they're both uniform. So you can continue to add all the way across the screen to get as many jigs as you wanted in one file. But before you exit, guys, always save. So that's the big thing. And if you're not sure how you're saving it, make sure you save as, and then there's my S1 jig file. And I'm going to hit save. Yes. That way I know exactly where it's saved to, because I have lost them that way too. All right, guys, well, I hope this helps. Like I said, I will be dropping some links, of course, to the S1 as well as to my Etsy shop. The jigs should be available here shortly as soon as I get the video processed. By the time you see the video, the jig kit should be in there. I've got to do a little bit more verification on the different file types. I will be including an xTool version, but it's a Lightburn version if you want to use it in Lightburn. But I kind of come up with the way that this works, and to be honest with you, now that I've got everything configured and I finally figured out how to keep everything in the same spot every single time, I like the way it works in XCS. Now I will probably continue to use Lightburn to generate the graphics and then just export them as an SVG and drop them in. But the button on the front of the machine when you're batching things out makes it really handy. So if you're using the jig kit, my guess is you're batching stuff out, and if you're batching stuff out, being able to just unload, reload, slap the button, that's a good thing. But anyway, guys, I appreciate it. If you don't mind, hit that hit the thumbs up button, hit the like button, guys. Help me get the video a little bit of traction. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Clack Shack. I'm going to be doing some more work with this machine. I'm always having other machines come through the shop, but I try to take, and if I get a machine that I don't have, everything I like about it, kind of like what I did with this one, I try to develop tools and develop techniques that makes using the machine easier and a little more efficient and as economical as possible. So go check those links out down below, guys. And until next time, be safe and have a good day.